What happens when two of the most outspoken women in entertainment go head to head over the most divisive royal scandal in recent memory? The tension inside Studio 1A was suffocating. Meghan Markle's heels clicked sharply against the polished floor as she stepped onto the set of The View, her every move deliberate, her smile as rehearsed as it was radiant. But this wasn't about a cookbook. This wasn't about Netflix. This was Whoopi Goldberg's house, and Meghan knew it. Before we dive into the confrontation that left one of them in tears and the other storming off set, hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below, because what you're about to witness isn't just television. It's a cultural moment. Producers expected a routine celebrity sit-down. What they got was a reckoning. Meghan was 30 minutes late. Her entourage, publicists, handlers, assistants, trailed behind her like a royal procession. She wore a cream blazer worth more than a month's rent, her signature low bun slicked into place. Meanwhile, Whoopi sat backstage, hunched over her notes with the focus of a litigator prepping for a high-stakes trial. She'd followed Meghan's story for years, but something about the latest headlines had pushed her patience to the brink. Joy Behar glanced nervously between her note cards. Sarah Haynes fidgeted with her pen until Sunny Hostin silenced her with a single glance. Even before cameras rolled, everyone could feel it. Something big was about to happen. She really thinks she can come in here and spin another fairy tale. Whoopi muttered to her producer, her tone sharper than usual. I've been in this game too long. I can smell manufactured victimhood from a mile away. Then the red light flashed, cameras on, audience silent. The air shifted. Meghan glided into her chair, every gesture choreographed. Her smile was bright, but under the studio lights, it felt thinner, less certain. Welcome back to The View, Whoopi began, voice calm but laced with iron. Today we're joined by Meghan Markle, and we're going to talk about some things that need to be addressed. Head on. Meghan's smile twitched, just for a moment, almost imperceptible. But not to Whoopi. She'd been reading people for decades. She saw it. Thank you for having me, Meghan replied, her voice smooth, polished, practiced. I'm always happy to have honest conversations about my experiences. Honest, Whoopi repeated, letting the word hang in the air like a challenge. That's an interesting choice of word, because I've seen your interviews, your documentaries, your podcasts. And I'm having a hard time figuring out which version of honest we're dealing with today. The room dropped 10 degrees. Meghan's publicist shifted in her seat off camera, phone in hand, already preparing for damage control. The co-hosts looked at one another. No one dared interrupt. I'm not sure what you mean, Meghan said, the tremor in her voice betraying the nerves behind the poise. I've always told my truth, even when it was hard. Whoopi didn't blink. See, that's where I'm confused. You've said the royal family was racist, that they took your passport, that you couldn't leave your home, but then we see you at polo matches, in New York for your baby shower, traveling with celebrities. So help me understand. I'm trying to reconcile these two very different realities. Silence. Meghan adjusted in her seat. For the first time, the mask slipped. Slightly. Those were highly controlled appearances, she insisted. Her voice had risen a notch. You have to understand. The institution knows how to manage perception while maintaining control. The institution, Whoopi repeated. Her brow furrowed, her tone cool. That's such a vague term. Mysterious, almost convenient. Because when I hear institution, I think about systemic racism. I think about slavery, Jim Crow. Things with names, dates, people attached. Not whispers in palace corridors. Meghan's eyes narrowed, a flicker of anger. Or was it realization? She was in the ring with someone who didn't flinch. With all due respect, Meghan said, sharper now. Just because my experience doesn't mirror yours doesn't make it less valid. I never said it wasn't valid. Whoopi replied. I said words matter. When you invoke words like racism, oppression, silencing, you are stepping into a history that's bigger than you. Bigger than any palace. So I need you to be very specific about what you mean. The dam broke. Meghan's composure unraveled. You want specifics, she said, voice hard now. Let's talk about how they questioned whether my child would be too dark to fit their image. Let's talk about how they denied him security because of how he might look. And with that, the studio erupted, not with applause, not with gasps, but with the sound of everyone realizing this wasn't an interview. It was a battle, and only one woman would walk away unscathed. Whoopi's eyebrows shot up. She leaned in like a detective who had just caught a suspect in a contradiction. Wait a second, she said, her tone razor sharp. You're telling me that the same royal family who welcomed your black mother to the wedding, who walked her down the aisle when your father didn't show, who embraced her publicly, they are the ones who had an issue with your child's skin color. Meghan's expression tightened. It's not that simple, she said, her voice rising slightly. She could feel the walls closing in. Whoopi wasn't throwing softballs. She was coming with receipts. These were private conversations, Meghan insisted. Quiet, behind closed doors. You wouldn't understand the subtle ways racism operates in elite spaces. The air in the studio froze. Whoopi's voice dropped to a dangerous whisper, the kind that made producers tense and co-hosts brace. Joy Behar instinctively placed a hand on her chest, already feeling the heat that was coming. Child, Whoopi said, eyes locked on Meghan. I was facing racism in elite circles before you even knew what a country club was. I've been the only black face in the room, more times than I can count. I've smiled at people who turned around and said things that would curl your hair. Her voice hardened. So don't you dare sit there and tell me I wouldn't understand subtle racism. The studio fell into stunned silence. Sarah Haynes had stopped clicking her pen. Sunny Hostin was scribbling notes like a court reporter. Everyone knew this moment would be replayed for years. Meghan's voice cracked. Her poise was unraveling. That's not what I meant. This is what always happens. Every time I speak, people twist my words. They dismiss my experience. Your truth, Whoopi repeated, her tone cool, almost pitying. No, that's a phrase that bothers me. She sat back in her chair, folding her arms. See, truth isn't personal, sweetheart. Truth is truth. Facts are facts. And here are the facts. You married into one of the richest, most powerful families on earth. You lived in palaces. You had access to resources most people will never even dream of. And when things got hard, as they do in every family, you set fire to the whole institution and called yourself a victim. Play the victim, Meghan repeated, the words catching in her throat. Her mask dropped. I was suicidal, Whoopi, she said, her voice trembling now, raw and exposed. I thought about ending my life. Because of the pressure, the isolation, the relentless attacks from the press. How is that playing the victim? Silence. Even the crew had stopped moving. What had started as a celebrity interview had now become something far more serious. For a brief moment, Whoopi's face softened. Real empathy flickered across her features. I'm sorry you went through that, she said quietly. Mental health is nothing to take lightly. I would never diminish that kind of pain. Then the steel returned to her voice. But here's what I don't understand. If you were really in that dark a place, why didn't you get help? Why didn't you reach out to mental health services? Or to Harry's family, people who've publicly dealt with mental health struggles themselves? Meghan didn't hesitate this time. Her voice was no longer measured. It was fire. Because they were the problem, she snapped. How could I go to the people who were causing my pain and ask them to fix it? The pressure, the judgment, the coldness, it came from them. All of them. All of them. Whoopi pressed, the interviewer fully unleashed now. Every single person in that family. Harry's brother, who's battled anxiety. His father, who's spent decades advocating for mental health awareness. Meghan stared back at her, silent. The confrontation was no longer just emotional. It was existential. The room was electric, and no one was breathing. Whoopi didn't flinch. Her gaze cut through Meghan like a spotlight. His grandmother, Whoopi said slowly. The same woman who reportedly loved you enough to lend you her personal jewels for public appearances. Every single person in that family was plotting against you. Meghan opened her mouth, then closed it again. She'd walked herself into a corner, and the panic showed. Off camera, her publicist had now stood up, motioning discreetly with her hands wrap it up, but Whoopi wasn't done. "No," she said, her voice steady but rising in intensity. "Here's what I think happened." She leaned forward. "I think you walked into that family with a fantasy in your head, an idea of what royal life would be like. And when reality didn't match your expectations, you didn't adapt. You didn't ask questions. You didn't learn. You decided everyone else was the problem. And suddenly, you were the victim." Meghan's composure cracked. "That's not fair," she said, her voice breaking for the first time. Tears were welling in her eyes now, her carefully controlled tone thick with emotion. "You don't know what it's like to have every single thing you do dissected," she said. "To wake up to headlines twisting your life into fiction. To be hated just for marrying someone you love." Whoopi didn't miss a beat. "Please," she said sharply, her voice slicing through the air like a blade. "Let's talk about lies. You told Oprah no one prepared you for royal life. That you didn't know anything. That you weren't taught protocol, but there's footage, months before your wedding, of you being coached at public events. Being shown exactly what to do." Her voice was rising now. "You said you didn't know to curtsy to the Queen. But there's video of you curtsying perfectly the first time you met her. So help me understand, were you lying then, or are you lying now?" Meghan flushed crimson. Anger, shame, and disbelief washed over her face. "Those were details," she said, defensive now. "The bigger picture was that I was thrown into this with no emotional support." Whoopi pounced. "Support," she echoed, incredulous. "You had staff, you had Harry, you had coaches, consultants, advisors, entire departments behind you. What you didn't have," she continued, "was someone telling you that centuries of tradition would bend to your personal preferences." "This is ridiculous," Meghan said, her voice cracking under the pressure. "I came here thinking we could have a respectful conversation. Instead, I'm being attacked. Attacked." Whoopi's voice rose, matching Meghan's rising emotion. "Child, I'm asking questions. Real questions. The ones every journalist should have asked you years ago. If pointing out contradictions is an attack, maybe the issue isn't with the questions. Maybe the issue is with your answers." The room was frozen. Joy Behar sat wide-eyed, glancing between the two women like she was watching a tennis match with grenades. Sarah Haynes looked like she wanted to intervene, but didn't dare. Even Sunny Hostin had stopped writing. "I don't have to sit here and take this," Meghan said, now fully in tears. The mask had shattered. Her voice trembled, her mascara running in streaks down her cheeks. "I came here to share my story, not to be interrogated like I'm on trial." "Respectful." Whoopi leaned back slowly, eyes locked on Meghan. "You want to talk about respect? Let's talk about respect for the millions of people facing real systemic racism every single day. Let's talk about respect for the institution that welcomed you in. Let's talk about respect for the truth, not whatever version of it happens to fit your narrative that week." Meghan was breaking down now, visibly shaking as she wiped at her cheeks, smudging the remains of her makeup. Her publicist was frantically signaling for the interview to end, but the cameras kept rolling. And Whoopi wasn't finished. "You know what breaks my heart?" she said, her voice quieter now, but sharper than ever. "It's not that you struggled. It's not that it was hard. It's that you were handed a platform that could have been used for real good. For real change, and you wasted it, turning it into a PR machine for your own personal grievances." Meghan's voice came back hoarse, but defiant. "How can you say that?" she asked, wiping tears. "I've done nothing but try to make a difference, to shine a light on injustice, to advocate for issues that matter." Whoopi didn't blink. "Oh, you mean issues like your 40,000 baby shower in Manhattan?" she snapped. "While people were losing their jobs and struggling to eat. Or was it when you complained about living in a cottage on Windsor Estate while families around the world were sleeping in their cars? Or when you cried over your title while people are out there fighting for basic human rights?" The other co-hosts sat frozen. No one said a word. Joy looked like she wanted to crawl under the table. Sunny was scribbling notes so fast her pen might catch fire. And Meghan, once a master of the stage, sat defeated, mascara streak, trembling, speechless. And the cameras never stopped rolling. "Everything I say gets twisted," Meghan said, voice trembling. "Taken out of context. I can't win, no matter what I do." Whoopi leaned forward slowly, her eyes sharp with controlled fire. "Context," she said, her voice cutting through the tension like glass. "Let me give you some. I grew up poor. Not we only have one palace poor, real poor. I worked my way up from nothing. I faced real discrimination, real barriers. Systemic racism that had laws written into it. And you know what I didn't do?" She paused, then hit the nerve. "I didn't blame the entire world for my pain." Behind the camera, Meghan's publicist had stood up, visibly panicking, making frantic cutting motions across her throat. But the producers didn't blink. The cameras kept rolling. This wasn't a segment anymore. This was history. "I never said I was the only one who struggled." Meghan shot back, her tears mixing now with fury. "But just because other people have had it worse doesn't mean my pain isn't real." Whoopi nodded. Once. Her voice softened, just slightly. "Your pain is valid," she said. "But your response to it, that's what I'm questioning. When the fairy tale cracked, you didn't reflect. You didn't adapt. You set fire to everything and called it survival. You hurt people who loved you. And then you came to America and turned your family drama into a brand." The word hit Meghan like a slap. She recoiled, as if physically struck. "Brand," she repeated, her voice rising. "You think I wanted this? I lost everything, Whoopi. My family, my home, my identity. I had to start over from nothing." Whoopi tilted her head, incredulous. "Nothing," she echoed. "You had $1 million deals before you even landed at LAX. You had Oprah. You had Hollywood at your feet. You had a safety net most people can't even dream of. That's not nothing. That's privilege." Meghan stood up suddenly, her chair sliding away behind her. Her hands were clenched, her face flushed. "I don't have to listen to this," she snapped. "This isn't an interview. It's an ambush." Whoopi didn't flinch. Her voice lowered, but carried the weight of a gavel. "Sit down. Silence. You came here to tell your story. Tell it, but not just the polished parts. Not just the angles that win you sympathy. Tell the whole story." Meghan stood frozen, chest heaving. Her voice cracked. "You want the whole story?" she whispered. "Fine. It wasn't just racism, or the press. I left because I realized I would never be enough for them. No matter what I did. No matter how hard I tried." Whoopi's expression shifted. For the first time, something softened. "Enough for who?" she asked quietly. Meghan swallowed hard. The word came barely above a whisper. "Harry." The boom operator leaned forward instinctively, adjusting his mic. Every breath in the studio seemed to pause. "I realized," Meghan said, "that no matter how much he said he loved me, when it really mattered, he would always choose them over me." The silence was absolute. This wasn't in the memoir, not in the Netflix series, not in the podcasts. This was the raw truth, unfiltered, undeniable. "So this was never really about racism," Whoopi said softly. "This was about a marriage unraveling. About a woman who couldn't handle not being the center of someone else's world." Meghan's face collapsed. All pretense, gone. "You don't understand," she cried. You've never been in love with someone who made you feel like you had to compete with ghosts, with tradition, with a dynasty older than you'll ever be. Whoopi didn't raise her voice. Actually, I do understand, she said gently. I know what it's like to love someone who can't give you what you need. I know what it's like to feel invisible. But what I don't understand is destroying everyone around you because you couldn't handle your pain. Meghan broke down, fully, sobbing. Her designer blazer wrinkled, her bun undone. She looked nothing like the polished duchess who had walked onto that stage just an hour earlier. I just wanted to be happy, she choked. I thought if I found the right person, built the right life, it would fix everything. Whoopi's voice was calm now. Honest, maternal. Life isn't perfect. Marriage isn't perfect. Families definitely aren't perfect. And when you join something bigger than yourself, sometimes you put your happiness second. Meghan stared at her, mascara streaked, hands trembling. What about my happiness? She asked through her tears. What about what I needed? Whoopi looked her dead in the eye. What about Harry's happiness? She said. What about his family? His brother, his father, his grandmother, who's now gone? What about everyone who got hurt when you blew it all up? Meghan had no answer. None. She stood there, tears falling, her silence speaking louder than any defense. I think we need a break, Joy Behar whispered, her voice small in the vacuum of tension. No, Whoopi said firmly. We're not taking a break. This is real. This is what accountability looks like, and it's long overdue. She turned back to Meghan, who now looked physically unsteady. You're a smart woman, but you made bad choices, and instead of owning them, you doubled down. You spun them into a narrative, and now you're so deep in your own version of the truth. You can't find your way back. Meghan's voice came faintly, crushed. Maybe you're right, she whispered. Maybe I did make it all about me. Maybe I was selfish. The words hung in the air like smoke. There was no spin left, no script, just the truth finally said out loud. Whoopi nodded slowly. It's not too late, she said. It's never too late to take responsibility, to make amends, to really try, to repair what's been broken. But Meghan was already turning, her publicist rushing to escort her. I can't do this anymore, she murmured. I'm sorry. And then she was gone, leaving Whoopi and the rest of the panel in stunned silence. The camera kept rolling, capturing what was instantly being hailed as one of the most raw, unscripted moments in daytime television history. Whoopi looked straight into the lens. Her tone wasn't cruel, just real. Sometimes the truth hurts, she said, but sometimes we need to hurt to finally grow. The credits would roll soon. But the conversation, that had just begun,